Royal Guard broke formation for just 7 seconds, but it saved a national embarrassment. Welcome to our channel, where every story holds a hidden truth and a moment worth remembering. If you're watching this right now, take a second to say hello in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories reach across the world. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because tomorrow's story will reveal a moment so powerful. You won't want to miss it. Now settle in and get ready, because today's tale will take you where honor and silence collide. The morning sun broke gently over London, casting a golden shimmer across the ornate gates of Buckingham Palace. On most days, the square outside would be filled with camera, flashes, curious tourists, and the echo of children's laughter bouncing off the stone. But today was no ordinary day. Today was ceremonial. It was the annual parade honoring both tradition and the modern face of the monarchy, an event that carried weight far beyond the shine of brass buttons or the gleam of polished boots. This was not just a show for tourists, it was a live symbol of national identity. And on this day, every second would be scrutinized by diplomats, foreign leaders, and millions of eyes watching across the globe. Among the sea of red tunics and towering bearskin caps stood Lance Corporal Samuel Wright. A seasoned member of the Queen's Guard, Samuel had performed this duty countless times. He knew the rhythm, the order, the stillness required. But no matter how often one stands in that line, spine straight, eyes forward, motionless, the pressure never fades. To the average onlooker, the Queen's Guard may seem like statues, stoic, and silent symbols of perfect control. But behind that stillness lies a current of tension, flowing just beneath the surface. A single misstep, a delayed turn, a shaky hand. Any of these could compromise not just personal pride, but the international image of the crown itself. Today, the pressure was heavier than usual. There were whispers among the ranks, minor protocol, adjustments, a shift in route, the presence of new dignitaries watching from the palace balcony. But none of this was to be shown, not in their posture, not in their pace, not in their eyes. Samuel stepped into position precisely at 9 a.m., the moment marked by a faint chime from the palace clock tower. The courtyard fell into ceremonial silence. Every movement from this point on would be exact, timed to the second. His boots struck the cobblestone like clockwork, sharp, deliberate, without hesitation. On both sides of the courtyard, security teams and palace staff moved like background actors in a grand play. The real focus was on the guards, always the guards. To the world, they were the heartbeat of British order. Samuel's gaze remained fixed forward, but his peripheral awareness was razor-sharp. He knew who was in front, who was behind. He counted each step, timed every breath. He had done this so many times he could feel it in his bones. And yet each time was different, because perfection was expected. A bead of sweat formed beneath his collar, not from heat but from the weight of expectation. His heartbeat stayed calm, but inside, a voice kept repeating what every guard learns on day one. You are not just a soldier, you are a symbol. Symbols do not falter. Today, that phrase would be tested. He didn't know it yet, but within moments, his years of training, his unshakable discipline, and his sharp eye would be called into play. Not in combat, not in parade drills, but in something far more subtle and far more delicate, something only he would notice, something no one else could fix, and something that, if left unchecked, could spiral into national embarrassment. As Samuel turned on cue with the rest of his unit, a tiny, nearly imperceptible detail caught his attention. But he kept marching. He kept silent. And yet, in his mind, the countdown had already begun. As Samuel marched forward in perfect sync with his fellow guards, the courtyard echoed with the rhythmic beat of polished boots striking stone. The moment felt smooth, ceremonial, controlled. But beneath the surface, something wasn't right. He'd seen it, barely, but it was enough. Out of the corner of his eye, during that exact quarter turn, he caught sight of a detail that twisted his stomach into a slow, deliberate knot, the hue of a badge off. The angle of its placement, wrong, and not just a little off. It was inverted. A mistake like that doesn't happen. Not here. Not in this institution built on tradition, order, and centuries of precision. The badges worn by Queen's Guards are more than decorative. They represent regiments, honor, battles fought by men long gone but never forgotten. Wearing one incorrectly isn't just embarrassing, it's disrespectful. And if the press got a photo of it, it would explode. Samuel's jaw tightened. His steps didn't falter. His spine stayed locked in place. But inside, his mind began working. Like a machine. Which guard was it? Which row? Which angle would the camera hit next? How long until the dignitaries turned to face that side? The mistake belonged to a Tan Bin, a rookie no older than 20, placed 2 positions ahead of Samuel in the rear left flank. Probably his first royal ceremony. A decent soldier, eager to prove himself. But somewhere along the morning prep, between the buckle check, the uniform polish, and the final lineup, a mistake had slipped through the cracks, and now it was marching in full view of the world's cameras. Samuel knew the drill. He couldn't speak. He couldn't break formation. He couldn't even move his head to signal someone. But doing nothing, that wasn't an option either. He mentally mapped the position of every camera he'd seen while entering formation. BBC, Sky News, a Japanese broadcast crew, and worst of all, the freelance tabloids, armed with 800mm zoom lenses that lived for mistakes like this. They didn't just spot flaws. They magnified them, captioned them, turned them into national headlines. Royal parade marred by uniform blunder. Queen's Guard fails at tradition. And every headline would run that one photo, the inverted badge shining like a scar on the face of perfection. Samuel adjusted ever so slightly. He shifted his shoulder, no more than half an inch. His steps remained within cadence, but the angle of his turn changed just enough to cast a shadow over the rookie's badge from the right-hand camera pit. It wasn't much, but in the right lighting, it would be enough to obscure the flaw from direct view. He knew he'd have one more opportunity at the main saluting angle. That was the critical shot, when all guards faced the audience for 7 full seconds of stillness. It was always the photo that landed on the front pages. He had to cover the error there too, without drawing attention to the fact that he was covering anything at all. As the unit approached the saluting line, Samuel's pulse slowed, not from calm, but from extreme focus. He adjusted his stride by milliseconds, pivoted half a degree slower, and let his boot land exactly 1 beat after the rest. It worked. His frame blocked the rookie's badge perfectly. 7 seconds. No flash reached the error. No angle caught. It exposed, and then a signal from the lead officer. The ceremony had ended. Marching cadence resumed. The moment passed. To the public, the parade was flawless. To the broadcasters, nothing seemed amiss. But to Samuel, he knew. He'd just walked the edge of disaster and kept it from falling. The final salute dissolved into synchronized motion as the Queen's Guard returned to formation. With boots striking the courtyard in rhythmic unity, the ceremony concluded just as it had begun, flawlessly, at least in the eyes of the world. As the last bar of ceremonial music faded, the crowd erupted into polite applause. Cameras panned across the gleaming sea of red tunics and towering bearskin caps. To the public, it was another perfect day at Buckingham Palace. Regal, precise, impeccable. But for Samuel Wright, it was a calculated escape from disaster, one that had required every ounce of focus, discipline, and control he possessed. The soldiers marched off the square in silence, their expressions unreadable, their posture unchanged. Once behind the heavy doors of the barracks building, the atmosphere shifted. The public eyes were gone. The weight of performance lifted, but only slightly. As soon as the last man crossed the threshold, the command was given. Parade, dismissed. A wave of exhaled breath passed through the room. Some soldiers rolled their shoulders. Others shook out tense arms. But Samuel? He stood still, eyes still forward, body locked in quiet intensity. He wasn't done yet. From across the barracks, Captain Thorne, the officer in charge of ceremonial protocol, approached. Known for his strict standards and rare praise, Thorne's uniform was spotless, his boots silent on the polished floor. He didn't speak at first. He walked past the rows of soldiers, nodding at the rookies, giving one sharp glance at the young guard with the inverted badge who stood pale but unaware. Then Thorne stopped directly in front of Samuel. The room held its breath. No medals were handed out. No public congratulations. No rallying applause. Instead, Thorne looked at Samuel, his eyes hard but not unkind. He gave the faintest nod. Just once. No more. And then he moved on. But that nod, it said everything. Samuel relaxed his shoulders, not visibly, not enough for anyone else to notice. But inside, the storm passed. His internal alarm system, which had been humming under the surface since the moment he spotted the error, finally powered down. There would be no press scandal, no headlines, no disciplinary notes for the rookie who'd made an honest mistake, because Samuel had caught it, covered it, handled it. Silently. Later, in the officer's logbook, Thorne would record a single line under ceremonial notes. Visual. Discrepancy neutralized. Tactical correction executed mid-ceremony. Commendable field awareness. That was it. No name. No citation. But Samuel didn't need credit. He didn't do it for applause. He did it because that's what being part of the Queen's Guard means. It's not about being seen. It's about what you protect, even if no one ever knows you did. Later that evening, as the rookies cleaned their gear and laughed about their first parade, the young guard with the misplaced badge came to Samuel in private. His face was pale, his voice soft. "Sir, I heard something was off. Was it me?" Samuel looked at him, young, still learning, still nervous. He simply said, "Next time, check every stitch, twice." Then he added quieter, "You've got potential, don't waste it." The rookie nodded, embarrassed but grateful. As the night fell over London and the palace lights dimmed, Samuel hung up his uniform for the day, his boots polished, his badge untouched, his silence louder than any speech. He'd carried the legacy through another day, and no one, not even the cameras, ever saw it. The barracks were quiet now. The day's ceremony had passed, the boots had been cleaned and stored, and most of the younger guards were in their bunks, sharing whispered jokes or texting family back home. But Samuel Wright remained in the armory, sitting alone beneath a flickering light, his gloves folded neatly in his lap. Outside, the stone courtyard still held the echoes of the morning parade, the stiff rhythm of tradition, the click of cameras, the applause of strangers. To the world, it was just another picture-perfect display of British pride. But Samuel knew better. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the tension in his shoulders lingering like a ghost. He hadn't saved a life. He hadn't taken a bullet. But today he'd protected something just as fragile, the illusion of perfection, the symbol, and no one knew. He didn't expect them to. That was the nature of his job, to be invisible in plain sight, to absorb pressure, so others could sleep peacefully at night. Not all battles were loud, some were quiet, internal, fought with the eyes and the mind, not the hands. A small creak behind him broke the silence. It was Corporal Jensen, one of the older guards. Not quite a friend, but someone who'd earned his respect over the years. "Thought you'd gone home," Jensen said, walking in with slow steps, sipping from a chipped thermos. Samuel gave a faint smile. Almost. Jensen sat across from him, setting the thermos on the bench between them. "I heard," he said. Samuel didn't respond. "You shifted formation to cover the rookie's badge, didn't you?" Still, Samuel said nothing, just looked. "Forward." Jensen nodded as if that silence was answer enough. "You know, most people wouldn't have noticed. Hell, half the cameras probably wouldn't have caught it." "That's not the point," Samuel finally said, voice quiet but firm. Jensen leaned back, crossing his arms. "No, it's not." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the old overhead light. Then Samuel spoke again, slower this time. "You trained for years to keep still. To not flinch, not react. And then, when something really goes wrong, you have to decide. Do you break protocol to save the mission, or follow it and let the mistake play out? That's the test they don't put in the manuals, Jensen replied. Samuel nodded. In that moment, the weight of it all settled into words. Being a guard isn't about standing still. It's about standing for something, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. He remembered his first day, green, nervous, chest puffed out like he had something to prove. Now, all these years later, the chest wasn't puffed, but the weight on it was heavier and more real. He rose slowly, picking up his gloves. Jensen asked, "You ever wish they'd recognize stuff like that? The stuff we do behind the curtain?" Samuel paused at the door, then said simply, "If they did, it wouldn't be invisible anymore." And with that, he walked into the hall, back straight, boots quiet against the old stone floor. Outside, the cold London air met him with a bite. He looked toward the palace, silent, majestic, lit like a monument against the night sky. Tomorrow, another ceremony, another march, another day of being the unshakable symbol. But for tonight, Samuel allowed himself one thought as he tucked the gloves into his coat pocket. True discipline isn't about standing still. It's about knowing when to move, even if the whole world believes you never did. By the time Samuel reached the gates of the palace, the night had settled in like a thick velvet curtain. The flicker of lamplight glinted off the iron railings, casting long shadows across the courtyard where, just hours ago, the world had watched a flawless performance unfold. Now it was empty, silent, exactly how he preferred it. He paused for a moment, resting his gloved hand against the cold metal of the gate. No fanfare, no crowds, just him and the quiet hum of duty still ringing in his chest. Most people don't realize how much of a soldier's life is lived unseen. It's not just the silence on the job, it's the silence afterward, the things you carry home, the decisions you make in a heartbeat that never make the headlines, the instincts honed over years that no one claps for, and the mistakes you prevent that no one ever knows existed. But Samuel had long since made peace with that. He didn't stand guard for recognition. He stood for the idea of something bigger than any one man or moment. Honor, precision, legacy. Those weren't just words stitched into the uniform or printed in the training manual. They were lived minute by minute in every decision made under pressure. As he walked along the edge of the courtyard, the words of his old drill sergeant came back to him. Words barked during their first week of training. You're not just a body in a uniform. You're a standard, a silhouette. You fall, the symbol falls with you. At the time, it sounded harsh, even theatrical, but now it made perfect sense. Symbols don't speak, they don't cry, they don't explain themselves. They endure, just like Samuel had today. And perhaps that was the whole point. In a world full of noise, of constant shouting, branding, and performance, real strength comes from stillness, from restraint, from knowing you could have drawn attention but chose to stay quiet. Because you weren't protecting yourself. You were protecting the whole. That kind of discipline. It's lonely, but it's also noble. He knew that somewhere, down the line, that young rookie he'd shielded today would learn that same lesson. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but eventually he'd feel that same pressure to act fast, to make the quiet choice, to do the right thing even when no one's watching. And when that day came, Samuel hoped he'd remember. Not the nod from a superior, not the absence of punishment, but the example set in silence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn patch, a regimental token given to him by his former captain after a long deployment in Afghanistan. It was frayed now, edges curled and color fading, but Samuel kept it with him always. On the back, stitched in barely there thread, were 3 words: "Hold the line." He ran his thumb over them, feeling the weight of their meaning. They weren't just about standing ground. They were about protecting the unseen border between chaos and order, ego and humility, visibility and quiet honor. He tucked the patch away and looked up once more at the palace, its silhouette strong against the London night, and somewhere, deep inside, a quiet pride settled. He hadn't been recognized. He hadn't been thanked. But he had held the line. And for a soldier like Samuel Wright, that was more than enough. What did this story mean to you? In a world where so many actions are done for recognition, there's something powerful about the quiet ones, the people who do the right thing even when no one is watching. Samuel's story reminds us that real honor isn't loud. It's silent, unshaken, steady. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a moment where you had to make the right choice in silence? Maybe it wasn't in uniform. Maybe it was at work, at school, or even in your own home. But it mattered. Share it in the comments below. Let's create a space where the quiet acts of courage can finally be heard. And while you're here, tell us, where are you watching from? We're always amazed by how far these stories reach, from small towns to big cities all over the world. Your comment might just inspire someone else to hold the line in their own life. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you don't miss tomorrow's story. It's one that might stay with you long after the screen goes dark.